animal named Bishike. Bishike was a young buffalo. He had not seen many seasons. And Bishike was out on the prairies. And the prairies were right next to a huge set of mountains. Giant mountains. Bishike had never been over the mountains. Now these mountains, every season, would bring huge storms. And he had heard about the storms. And he had never lived through them because he had not seen many seasons. The wise old ones had told of the big storms that had come through every season. Now he had been through some small storms before. They always brought him fear. And he knew that many animals, when there was a big storm, would run. He had friends that would often tell that when there was big storms, they would run. The deer, he knew they would run from those storms. And the birds, they would fly away from those storms. But the wise ones, the ones with tattered coats, whose hooves had seen many seasons, they told Bishike, they told him that he was not to run from those storms, that he instead was to turn and face the storm, and not just not run, but to stand and charge the storm. To look into the storm, put his head down, and charge that storm. Head into the storm, with his head down, and run through it. So the storm came one day. The clouds became very dark over the mountains. And Bishike and all his friends could feel the air change. Gentlemen, all the air became dark, and the clouds overhead became gray and then black. The air changed and charged with electricity. Soon, the deer ran, and the birds flew. And it seemed to Bishike that this made sense. The storms were coming. Every muscle in him wanted to run. But he listened to the wise ones, and he stood his ground. And as the edge of the storm came upon him, he put his head down, just like the old ones. And he put one foot in front of the other, and he began to charge that storm. And as he charged that storm, he felt the cold rain, and he put his head down, and he ran. He ran through that storm behind the old ones. And he ran, and he ran, and he endured that storm. But it wasn't long before he came out on the other side of that storm. And when he did, he lifted his head, and he thought to himself, well, it may not have been easy, but it didn't last that long. And after a day or two, he went back to his feeding grounds. And after a while, the deer and the birds came back. And he said to his friends, well, that wasn't so bad. I just listened to my old ones. I just put my head down and I charged that storm, and it wasn't great, but it didn't take that long. I charged that storm, and pretty soon it was over. And they said, "What are you talking about?" As we ran through that storm chased us. We ran through that storm, the storm chased us, and the further we ran, that storm followed us and rained down upon us. And the further we ran, the further the storm chased us. It took forever for us to come out of that storm. Bishop Kay said, "But it was the same storm that I went through, and I went through in no time." And I said, No, it couldn't be the same storm. It took us many, many days to get through. And he said, "No, all you had to do was turn and charge your storm, and you could get through in no time." I said, "No, we ran from our storm, and it took us many, many days." Bishop Kay thought about that. He couldn't figure it out. And he went to the elders, the old ones with tattered fur. And he said, "I don't understand. It was the same storm, but it took my friends many days." And they said, "Young one, if you run from your troubles, it will take much longer than if you turn and face them and charge your storm." And that is the story. So I have to tell you that it was Penguin that told me that story, but in another form. And I loved the story of, it wasn't about Bishop Kay, it was, she had told me the story of just the fact that bison, and this is true, bison or buffalo, out west, when there's, in the Rocky Mountain ranges and the plains, the cows and the deer and birds and things will run from storms. And they run from the storms, and because they're running, the storms will, move at the same speed, right? Or faster or slower or whatever, but they go like that. And the bison don't. They turn and they charge the storm. And because they're moving in the opposite direction, they're not in them as long. And when I heard that story, it really moved me. It really moved me. And when I heard that story, I went and I got a buffalo tattoo right here on my foot. And that was over a year ago. And it just so happened that was before I was diagnosed with cancer last year. And when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was before the end of my school year. And so I made a video for my students to explain why I wouldn't be able to finish the school year. And that's the story that I told them. And I told them, no matter what happens, I'm going to go through my treatments, and I'm going to put my head down, and I'm going to charge my storm. And I did. I went through all my treatments, and there were days I didn't want to go. And I put my head down, and I charged my storm. And you may or may not end up seeing my Jeep, but it's called Storm Charger because it's something that helped me get through cancer. And you're going to face challenges in your life, and it's something that I want you to take with you, is that no matter what your trouble is, you have a choice. You can either run from your troubles, or you can turn and charge your storm. So, one last thing before we say our good nights. You've noticed that sometimes some of the grown-ups here have to come and go because of their big girl jobs and big boy jobs and things like that.